Sri Lanka is 65,000 square kilometers in extent, an island below the southern tip of India in the Indian Ocean. It has been known as the Pearl of the East from ancient times. It has a recorded history of over 2,500 years, and definite information about its form of government is available from the 3rd century BC in the Anuradhapura period. In ancient times, the head of state was the king, and Sri Lanka was a monarchy. He was also entrusted with the legislative functions. The king had a court of ministers to represent the interests of the people and to advise him. In the 4th century BC, King Pandukabhe made Anuradhapura the first capital of Sri Lanka, a fairly modern city. The forerunner of the parliament, the royal court, met in the evening to manage municipal matters under a different official called Nagaraguttika. During the 5th century, the royal court met in a special place presided over by the king. Ruins of an ancient royal court at Sigiriya are visible even today. During the Polonnaruwa period, a special, beautiful building was constructed by King Parakramabahu for the royal court to meet. King Nisankamalla, who followed him, built his own royal court close to the waters of the Parakrama Samudra, or reservoir. This tradition has been followed in Kandy, the last kingdom of the Sinhalese, where an artificial lake was created close by. The maritime districts fell to the Portuguese in 1505. Then came the Dutch in 1602, and the last bastion of the Sinhalese, the Kandyan kingdom, was taken over by the British in 1815 with the signing of the Kandyan Convention. However, just 3 years later, the British administration was disrupted due to rebellion by the Sinhalese. As a result, the Colebrook Commission was appointed in 1833 to introduce reforms. According to its recommendations, the two separate councils, the Executive Council and the Legislative Council, were formed. In the beginning, both legislative and executive councils met at the building of the present Ministry of Foreign Affairs in front of Gordon Gardens in the Colombo Fort. In 1912, the number of members increased to 21, and again to 37 in 1921. It was further increased to 49 in the year 1924. This was followed by the appointment of the Dunamore Commission. Based on its recommendations, the universal franchise for all adults over the age of 21 was introduced in 1931, and the name Legislative Council was changed to State Council, which consisted of 61 members. A land near Galface was selected for a parliament building, and a design by architect Woodson was accepted. It was opened ceremonially by Sir Herbert Stanley on the 29th of January 1930. Sir Stanley, in his address, said that he believed that the people will protect the independence and the dignity of this building. The Soulbury Commission, which was appointed in 1944, recommended a package of reforms in 1946 based on the Westminster model. Accordingly, the Parliament consisted of the Senate, or the upper house, and the House of Representatives, the lower house. The Senate had 30 members and the House of Representatives 101, of which 95 members were elected and 6 were nominated by the Governor-General. The Prime Minister and the Cabinet were answerable to the lower house. Sri Lanka achieved independence from Britain on the 4th of February 1948 with Dominion status. The head of the state was the Governor-General representing the Queen of Great Britain. The Right Honourable D.S. Senanayake became the first Prime Minister. From 1948 to date, the Right Honourable D.S. Senanayake, Dudley Senanayake, Sir John Kotalavala, S.W.R.D. Bandaranayake, Dr. Vijayananda Dahanayake, Mrs. Sirimavo Bandaranayake, J.R. Jayawardena, R. Premadasa, D.B. Wijayatunga, Ranil Wickramasinghe, Mrs. Chandrika Bandaranayake Kumaratunga, Ratnasiri Wickramanayake, and Mahinda Rajapaksa served as Prime Ministers, while the present Prime Minister is the Honourable D.M. Jayaratne. Of these, J.R. Jayawardena, R. Premadasa, D.B. Wijayatunga, Mrs. Chandrika Bandaranayake Kumaratunga, and Mahinda Rajapaksa have been elected executive presidents. Prior to that, Sir Oliver Gunathilaka and Mr. William Gopallava held the position of Governor-General. Sri Lanka became a republic with the adoption of a new constitution on the 22nd of May 1972. According to this constitution, the legislature, called the National State Assembly, had only one house with 168 elected representatives. On the 7th of September 1978, the second Republican Constitution of Sri Lanka, the Constitution of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka, was enacted. The special features of the Constitution were the introduction of the proportional representation system and the securing of the executive presidency. The number of members was 225, out of which 29 were appointed from the national lists of members from parties and independent groups that contested. The Parliament is the supreme legislative authority of the country, which has a life of 6 years. The Parliament can be summoned, prorogued, and dissolved by a proclamation by the President. Parliament has 4 main functions, namely lawmaking, scrutiny of the executive, ventilation of public grievances through public petitions and questions in the Parliament, and the control of public finance through the Public Accounts Committee and the Committee on Public Enterprises. As the Galle-Face Parliament building was inadequate, the House permitted in 1979 the building of a new parliament in Sri Jayawardena Kotte. The Kotte Kingdom, which was established by Nissanka Alakeshwara or Nissanka Alakakonara in the 14th century, and later another distinguished king, Parakrama Bahudur VI, made it his capital. The sacred tooth relic was deposited in this kingdom of Sri Jayawardena Kotte. It was a famous and beautiful city, described in the chronicle the Salalini Sandesha, written by the Venerable Totagamue Sri Rahula Thero. The new parliament at Sri Jayawardena Kotte was declared open on the 29th of April 1982, and it is the third building after the Legislative Council was established in 1833. With the opening of the new parliament, Sri Jayawardena Kotte became the administrative capital of Sri Lanka. The new parliament was designed by the famous architect Geoffrey Bava to be located on a beautiful 16-acre island in the historical Devanna Lake, 15 kilometers eastward from the city of Colombo. Under the standing orders, Parliament meets on 2 alternating weeks after the first and third Sunday of each month, on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. The national flag is flown at full mast on the second floor of the Parliament building, facing the ceremonial drive to signify that the Parliament is sitting. If the meeting goes on beyond 6:30 p.m., a lantern amber in color atop the flagstaff shines in place of the national flag to indicate that the Parliament is still at work. The building, which spreads over 48,000 square meters, reflects the historic Panchavasa, or the five-fold historic buildings of Sri Lanka, as designs were based on indigenous traditions. Its doorways from all sides have unique, beautiful displays of art. The entrance to the building is through a clump of ironwood trees. The ironwood, or na, is the national tree of Sri Lanka. Immediately afterwards, one comes across the beautiful pond with manil, or blue lotus, which is the national flower. Beyond this pond is the entrance to the foyer that leads to the chamber. Beyond the foyer is a special ceremonial area of the Parliament. Visible on either side of the foyer are two large ornamental bells, which were gifted to Parliament by Mitsui Construction Company of Japan. The ceiling has been decorated by the work of the famous artist, Mrs. Ina de Silva. In the middle of the foyer is a folding bronze door which protects the pair of gates made of iron and silver, behind which is the entrance to the main chamber. The wall between the main door and the entrance to the chamber is covered with exquisite murals by the artist Dr. Manjusri. These are unique traditional paintings depicting gods and goddesses mentioned in the epistle Salalini Sandesha. Inscribed on the door of the chamber is the preamble to the Constitution of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka in Sinhala, in Tamil, and English. This has been done in a style similar to ancient stone inscriptions. This masterpiece has been done by metal sculptor Vimal Surendran. At the entrance of the Speaker's Gallery is a unique painting by the well-known artist Senaka Senanayaka. The members of Parliament, the staff and the public have their respective entrances situated on the ground floor. The members' entrance on the east side is adorned by a mural carved in mahogany by Mahinda Abesekara and depicts a sylvan scene. The staff entrance, situated on the west side, is adorned by a mural depicting a marsh done by Anil Gamini Jayasurya. These two entrances lead to one corridor, the walls of which are lined with photographs of members of Parliament, past and present. The centerpiece of the whole building is the chamber. Meticulous care has been lavished on this. It is a place of arresting beauty. It is rectangular in shape and occupies a height of 2 floors. 18 silver flags, banners and standards of kings, temples and corales on ornamental stainless steel posts, and 7-foot-tall insignia of Sri Lanka form a halo above the chamber, giving it dignity. A magnificent giant chandelier of beaten copper, plated in silver, hanging from the center of the roof directly beneath the suspended coffered ceiling, gives an oriental ambiance. This dazzling spectacle was designed and constructed by Lucky Senanayaka. The Speaker's chair is a gift from the British House of Commons and is fashioned from a 200-year-old piece of pure English oak. This is made from a part of a beam of the House of Commons dislodged when it was partly destroyed during the Second World War. The chair, which is 6 feet in height, is upholstered in deep maroon, and the Sinhala lion with a drawn sword is embossed in gold on leather under the head of the chair. The Speaker derives his powers from the Constitution, Standing Orders, the Parliament, Power and Privileges Act, and Convention and Practices of Parliament. He presides at the meeting of the Parliament and is responsible for the observance of rules of order. He is the representative of Parliament itself in its power, proceedings, and dignity. The office of the Speaker is prestigious and is of great importance. The Speaker ranks third in the order of precedence next to the Prime Minister, who comes immediately after the President. According to standing orders, the Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, and the Deputy Chairman of committees are elected by the members. It is the Speaker who appoints members and chairmen to committees. He presides at the Committee of the whole Parliament, the Committee of Selection, the House Committee, the Committee on Standing Orders, and the Committee on Parliamentary Business. The Speaker is the most important person in Parliament and handles its most difficult tasks. He is elected by the House at its first meeting following a general election. The Speaker is the guardian of the rights and privileges of Parliament and the final authority on the interpretation of the rules of procedure. Impartiality and fairness are his prime attributes. The Speaker is also responsible for the management of the parliamentary estate. In the absence of the Speaker, the Deputy Speaker and, in his absence, the Deputy Chairman of committees will preside. Below the Speaker's chair are the chairs of the Secretary General, the Deputy Secretary General, and the Assistant Secretary General. The Secretary General is the advisor to the Speaker in matters relating to the exercise of all power and functions that belong to the Speaker and to the House through the Speaker. He has to be present in the chamber during the sittings of the House. The Secretary General has not only to hold the balance between the government and the opposition, but he must also enjoy the confidence of both. His advice is available to all members, irrespective of party affiliations, and such advice is full, frank, and completely impartial. The Secretary General, who is the head of the staff of Parliament, is appointed by the President after seeking the observations of the Parliament Council. By virtue of his being the Secretary General, he functions as the Secretary to all parliamentary committees. Beyond the bar of the House on either side sits the Sergeant-at-Arms and his deputy, who carries the mace when the Speaker enters the chamber. The Sergeant-at-Arms is responsible for the maintenance of order within the premises and performs ceremonial functions. He is privileged to be allowed to wear a sword to indicate his authority to defend the Speaker and the members of Parliament. On the right of the Speaker are seats allocated to members of the governing party. On the left are the seats that belong to the opposition. The seating capacity is for 232 members. The first two rows of seats on the right-hand side of the Speaker are reserved for cabinet ministers. The 8th seat in the front row is reserved for the President, while the 7th seat is occupied by the Prime Minister. The leader of the opposition sits directly opposite to the President. Just above the steps leading to the chamber from the main entrance is a long rectangular nickel band placed across the red carpeted floor of the well of the chamber. This marks the bar of the House. The face of the bar is engraved with intricate designs traditionally symbolic of intrepidity, perpetuity, and prosperity. No one other than an elected representative is allowed to cross this bar, except the Secretary General's staff who are attached to the chamber. In the upper portion of the chamber is a raised gallery for the public, capable of seating 600 persons, with standing accommodation for many more. Immediately opposite the Speaker's chair is the Speaker's gallery. This gallery is reserved for privileged visitors. The press is accommodated in the gallery above the Speaker's chair. Quorum bells, which ring out like the singing of a salalinia or a grackle, are fixed in various parts of the building, and these are activated from the Speaker's table in his office and the Secretary General's table in the chamber. Parliamentary sittings commence with the arrival of the Speaker. The Sergeant-at-Arms leads the way carrying the mace, followed by the Deputy Sergeant-at-Arms. As soon as the Speaker enters the chamber, the Deputy Sergeant-at-Arms announces the Speaker's arrival. A procession made up of the Secretary-General, his deputies and the Speaker makes their way to the chamber. The Speaker occupies a special chair kept at a higher elevation. When the Parliament is in session, the mace is kept on the upper bracket of the table of the House. The mace, which is the symbol of authority of the Parliament, was gifted to Ceylon's House of Representatives in 1949 by the British House of Commons. The mace is composed of a staff of ebony with ornamentation in silver, 18-karat gold, and sapphires. When the House is in a committee stage, the mace is kept on the lower bracket of the table. It is the Sergeant-at-Arms who is the custodian of the mace, and he maintains the discipline in the House. The business of Parliament is conducted according to the standing orders of the Parliament in this order. A new member should be sworn in or affirmed before the Speaker, after which his name is entered in the register and he is allocated a seat according to his seniority in Parliament. Messages from the President on important public matters, the most frequent announcements relate to the certification of bills and so on, and they are read out in the House by the Speaker. Presentation of papers and reports from the committees are done by a minister or a deputy minister. A major portion of the work of any legislature is done by its committees. They have been established under the standing orders. While the main chamber of the House is in the forum, where the public interest is focused, the committee is the place where members attend to the detailed and specialized work relating to government plans and activities. A committee can also meet on any day at the convenience of its members. A committee is also able to summon experts and other relevant witnesses in helping them to arrive at their decisions. Many different committees can function at the same time, whereas in the main assembly, only one matter could be taken up at a particular time. The Parliament of Sri Lanka has 4 types of committees, such as select committees, consultative committees, standing committees, and committees for special purposes. The Public Petitions Committee enables a citizen to bring to the notice of Parliament an infringement of a fundamental right or other injustice by a public officer or an officer of a public corporation, a local authority or other like institution, and to seek redress for grievances suffered. Questions are notified beforehand and are included in the order paper to be answered by the relevant minister. Usually, about 15 oral questions are answered by government ministers each day. By convention, Parliament always passes votes of condolences on the demise of its former members. Leave is granted to members of Parliament by agreement of the House on a motion. Ministers are entitled to make statements on subjects that come within their ministerial responsibility. Any member against whom criticism or comments of a personal nature have been leveled is entitled to make a personal explanation, even though there is no motion before the House. Parliamentary privileges are those attached to Parliament in order to enable it to function freely, effectively, and independently without obstruction. For this purpose, the members of Parliament need to be given special rights which other citizens may not claim. Public business means the order of the day and motions. It includes bills, motions for the passage of regulations, supplementary estimates, and so on. The Constitution vests in the Parliament the primary legislative power to make laws, including laws having retrospective effect and those repealed, adding to or amending any provision of the Constitution itself. All legislative proposals have to be introduced in Parliament in the form of bills. There are different procedures for the passage of different kinds of bills, such as government bills, private members' bills, and urgent bills and so on. A government bill can only be presented by a minister of the cabinet or a deputy minister. They originate with their formulation in a government ministry or department, and it is referred to the legal draftsman for the preparation of the official draft bill. It is the duty of the Attorney General to examine every bill for any contravention of constitutional provisions. His opinion and the draft bill are then forwarded to the Cabinet of Ministers. Upon receipt of the Cabinet approval, the bill is ready to be published in the Gazette and referred to the Parliament for enactment. Thus, notice is given to the public of the intention to bring the bill before Parliament for its passage into law. The second reading of the bill is the main debate, where members express their views on the subject. The second reading should encompass wide-ranging discussions on the principles and scope of the bill. Following the vote in the second reading, a bill may be either referred to the Committee of the Whole House or a Standing Committee on Bills. It is almost invariably the practice for government bills to be committed to a Committee of the Whole House, because a bill can be passed more expeditiously in such a committee. The third reading of the bill is for the approval of the overall content of the bill with the committee stage amendments, and at this stage only verbal or drafting amendments and numbering of sections and so on may be done, and that too on a motion made. It is usual for the minister at the third reading to seek approval of the House to make consequential amendments. At the stage of certification, the bill should be prepared in strict compliance with the amendment accepted by the House of the committee stage. The Speaker has the power at this stage to correct printing, typographical and grammatical errors, but not to introduce any substantial deviation from clauses approved by the House. Basic rules relating to debating in the Parliament is that a member who speaks should do so standing and should address his words to the chair. He can only be interrupted if he gives way. He is, however, bound to give way if a point of order is raised. While presiding in the House, often the Speaker has to rule whether words or phrases used in the heat of debate are unparliamentary, and if they are, he orders the offending member to withdraw the words or that they are expunged from the Hansard. Sometimes the Speaker may feign to be deaf. The Parliament has a well-equipped library which is exclusively for use of members of Parliament. The stock held by the library includes books, periodicals, newspapers and reference material in subjects such as law, political science, history, economics, sociology and so on. The monograph collection in the library is nearly 30,000. Parliamentary debates or Hansards, legal enactments, acts and bills of Sri Lanka, government gazettes, parliamentary series, sessional papers, administrative reports and annual reports are some of the documents in the preserved collection. It also has a good collection of very valuable, rare books, documents and oaths of affirmation, papers of members of Parliament. The library is automated and is equipped with communication and internet facilities. The most important records kept in Parliament are the Hansards, which reproduce accurate proceedings in the House. The speeches in the Hansard are recorded in the language in which they have been delivered. Speeches are also recorded on audio and on DVD. The business of Parliament is conducted in Sinhala, in Tamil and English languages, and simultaneous interpretation is available during debates in all three languages. Members of Parliament have the option to select a language of their choice which can be heard over the headphones, and it is an indispensable service of the House. There are many colourful ceremonies attached to the Parliament. The most colourful is the inauguration of a new session of Parliament, when the President drives into the Parliament complex in an atmosphere of ceremonial grandeur and pageantry. Another colourful event in Parliament is the budget speech, in which the Finance Minister unfolds his budgetary plans for the following year. Addresses to parliamentarians by visiting dignitaries are also special events in Parliament. The Parliament website is www.parliament.lk. This site provides relevant information to the members of Parliament, the Secretariat and the general public. It has increased its accessibility of the parliamentary information among its stakeholders.